Cageside with John Morgan.
And welcome everybody to another episode of Cageside with John Morgan. I'm your host, Eric McMahon. Sean Strickland shocks the world, but he didn't shock this podcast. Alexander Volkov batters Alexa Grasso versus Shevchenko coming up. Plus, we got another big weekend of Cage Fury Fighting Championships this weekend from Four Bears Casino in North Dakota. I'll be there. The guy I'm about to bring in right now, his name is on the marquee, the first question guy, the blue t-shirt guy, also probably the best journalist in the game, John Morgan. What's up, pal? He will be there as well.
Yeah, man, we got a lot of stuff going on within the MMA world, but none bigger than Sean Strickland, right? I mean, what an incredible performance. As you said, didn't shock us in terms of how the fight, might turn out, but still was just a shock. It took me a while to process that it actually happened on Saturday night. Unbelievable. But yeah, busy stuff, man. I'm excited for it.
All right, so Sean Strickland becomes the new UFC middleweight champion by defeating Israel Adesanya 49-46 on all scorecards, making him, get this, only the sixth middleweight champion in UFC history.
Wow. That's crazy. That's crazy to think. I have not heard anybody throw that stat out there, but that is wild to think. It just goes to show you how long the reign of Anderson Silva was, that there weren't many other names popping up in that division during that incredible run. And then, of course, Israel Adesanya was just starting his second run as well. That's incredible.
It really is. Now, good thing for the internet, good things that we could download stuff to hit receipts. Check this out off of our analyst going into the fight. Check this out. 2 weeks away from Australia, Israel Adesanya versus Sean Strickland. Now, people are not giving Strickland a chance in this fight. A lot of the people talking, listen, we said this just 2 weeks ago. Styles make fights. To me, from just what I've seen, is that these are two, and both people are saying, well, they're strikers. Yeah, but they are strikers in completely different ways, right? And the style of Sean Strickland, in my opinion, is being completely overlooked by the masses when it comes to Izzy, right? It's not like he is not going to try and kickbox with him, and he's not going to try and take him down. What he is going to try and do is get in his face. And when you get in a kickboxer's face and you get in a guy who uses range exceptionally well, like an Izzy, when that range is closed and now we're fighting in a phone booth where Sean Strickland loves to do a lot of his fighting, that poses problems. I'm not going to say it's going to happen. I'm just saying that people are counting this fight out, and I am not one of them. Listen, styles make fights. Styles make fights. This turned out exactly how I kind of envisioned it going. I'm going to say I envisioned it going, and it's not just because I can analyze fights really well, or that we can analyze fights really well. We had data that shows that how do you beat an Izzy? And the way you beat an Izzy is closing the range. And people who can do that have a recipe of beating a particular style, like just a phenomenal, unorthodox, rangy kickboxer. You close that distance. And we had to look no further than a few years ago when Israel Adesanya first became champion. It was Kelvin Gastelum who showed us that recipe. And now he didn't have it to get through for all 5 rounds, but one could argue heading into that 5th and final, Kelvin Gastelum was winning that fight.
It really was. I mean, that's one of the greatest fights of all time, of course, man. Just an absolutely epic war. But, I remember as you were laying out that analysis last week, I was thinking about the great Mirko Cro Cop, right? And what a problem he was as a kickboxer, right? The right leg hospital, left leg cemetery. I mean, legendary stuff, right? But how did people start to beat Mirko Cro Cop? They realized what an elite level kickboxer was. And while it seems a little bit scary and a little bit counterintuitive to press somebody that's trying to knock you out, that's exactly what you want to do to a kickboxer, right? You want to eliminate the kickboxing range and get into boxing range, which is really what Sean Strickland does, right? He just throws the 1-2. So I remember as you were saying, I was thinking about that, but I believed that Sean Strickland could make it that type of fight, but here's why I say I believed it, and yet my mind was still blown when I watched the thing play out, because I assumed Israel Adesanya was so dynamic and so great in his movement that he was going to understand that, and he was going to start cutting angles. He was going to start slipping out to the left, to the right, get himself back to the center where he could find range again, because Sean Strickland moves forward, but he doesn't move forward at such like a rapid pace that you can't get away from it. But for whatever reason, he was never able to make those adjustments. Izzy would continually back straight up, kind of get trapped up against the fence and get stuck in that range. And man, I mean, just what a fight. I mean, the drama that unfolded in the opening round, and you're like, oh my goodness. And then Izzy does make adjustments in round 2. That's the only round he won on the scorecards. And I thought, okay, here we go. He's downloaded the information. He's making the adjustments. He's going to react on the fly. But it was not to be. And Sean Strickland continued to do exactly what you said he could do and should do to make this a fight. And now he's UFC middleweight champion.
So round 1, Sean Strickland comes through, huge right hand, literally spins Izzy around, drops him. Now, I kind of had to chuckle in the moment as this was happening, because Marc Goddard was not going to put himself in that same situation. Although you could argue, and he wouldn't have been wrong for stopping that fight on probably the 25th, 26th, 27th unanswered blow that was happening. But Marc Goddard in a championship fight was not going to put himself in the situation again. Was I the only one thinking that in real time?
No, because I had some group text messages that were receiving the same thing. Like, my man Marc Goddard is not putting himself back in that same situation. Of course, referring to the stoppage of Aljamain Sterling versus Sean O'Malley, which, again, some people think is early, some people think was spot on. But as you said, he was not going to allow himself to be in that position again. But, it was tough, because watching, I thought the same thing. To be honest with you, I wouldn't have had a problem with a 10-8 score in round 1. None of the judges went that way, but I thought
shocked
that fight,
me. That shocked me.
Me too. I thought that thing was so close to being finished. Now, I did see Izzy get up, and like as he's taking the barrage, he did kind of look over to Marc Goddard, and it looked like he tried to signal to him like, hey, I'm okay. I would advise, and I'm sure you as a licensed and active referee would advise that's probably not the smartest thing to do. Like, don't worry about signifying me. Like, let's just get out of the spot and take some shots. But I think he did try to signal to him, I'm okay. But nevertheless, he was still taking damage. So even if he's signaling I'm okay and he's taking shots, I wouldn't have had a problem with the stoppage there. I'm glad it didn't, because it gave us the extra drama that we got over the final 20 minutes of that fight. And it is why I sometimes say I wish there was a little bit longer leash in world title fights. I understand why there's not. Fighter safety is fighter safety, regardless of what level it's happening at. But I'm just glad it didn't get stopped in round 1.
I think we all are, because there's no controversy with this fight, and for that, I think we're all thankful. The ref didn't play a figure in this fight, and and there was a definitive winner, and there's no doubt there was a definitive winner. Now, something that you brought up on the onset when we started talking about this is we thought the adjustments were going to be made. We thought the downloading information was, and it just didn't seem to happen. I don't think that it didn't happen. I mean, I do think it happened. The downloading the information, all this stuff. I know what you meaning. You weren't meaning that he wasn't actively doing it, but to the common people, they're saying, and I've heard this, like, Izzy just had an off night, or Izzy wasn't there, and I just don't agree. And I'm going to tell you why. Sean Strickland employed the perfect game plan. And this is why I was so excited for this main event. How Izzy is, make no mistake about it, Izzy is a counter striker, right? He counter strikes better than probably anybody in this game. Sean Strickland did not give him an opportunity to counter strike. How does Israel Adesanya draw out the counter strikes? By feinting, feints here, feints there. And it makes somebody react before finally they overextend, and bing, bang, boom, Izzy's off and running, right? It's a tried, true formula that he has. If you watch this fight, and I watched it again the next day, every feint that he did, it was drawing out just a slight little reaction, and he never extended forward. And so what happened, because Sean Strickland never bit on these feints big and overextended himself was then Izzy started trying to lead the dance, albeit on his back foot, but he was leading the dance with the strikes. Then that Philly shell came in, bang, boom, boom. And guess what? Sean Strickland did not throw any hooks in this fight. Straight punches win fights. He only threw straight punches.
So true. He stayed on the 1-2 all night long, right? Let me throw the jab. Let me put the right behind it. I mean, he does that so well. And you're right. I mean, that is what Sean Strickland does. But to me, and I think that's what shocked me most because, man, you just laid it out expertly there. But he did have those little flinches, which he always does. He does that in every fight. And I thought for sure that Izzy was going to be able to get a read on that because you're right. Sean's not going to necessarily present himself to you, right? That's his whole game is I'm giving you very little target space. Like that's the whole point of the Philly shell style, right? Is that you have very little target space, which would work. But I just thought Izzy was going to be so good at finding that because, again, if you watch Sean Strickland fight, if you've seen tape, you've seen that's what he does. That's who he is. And I thought Izzy was potentially, again, that's why I thought this fight was going to be more competitive than a lot of people were giving it credit for. But ultimately, I did not think that Sean Strickland was going to walk away with the win. I thought Sean was going to make this go longer than people were giving him credit for. I thought he was going to make it more competitive than people were giving him credit for. But I thought Izzy was going to make those adjustments and find those marks. And he just never did.
Now, in full transparency, I didn't think Sean Strickland was going to win this fight. Right? I just said, if he is, this is going to be what he does.
Right.
And it is what he did. Because I even said it as we showed in the club. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying it's the way he has to do it. And it's a probable game plan for him, which he executed perfectly. Another thing that I have to say, and this is like for fighters out there, he cross-checked a lot of kicks too, right? He's not accepting leg kicks. He's for a boxer, very light on that front foot, right? Which because I sent you a text earlier that day and I said, I think Strickland's going to make this a war.
Yep.
But there's 3 scenarios. Scenario 1 is he starches him early. Scenario number 2, a la Paulo Costa fight, Izzy destroys Strickland's legs, which then will lead to a finish. Or option 3, Strickland closes the gap, suffocates Izzy, and beats him up. And all 3 of them were very, very likely under 3. But I was shocked that a leg kick game was ineffective against Sean Strickland. I was shocked by that.
Yeah, I was a little bit as well. And again, that was another a tool that I thought was going to be there for Izzy. Because you're right. Okay, so we always talk about the hand spacing, right? He does that kind of Philly shell approach. But then he also has kind of a Muay Thai footwork game, right? Where that lead leg is always really kind of up in the air. As you said, very, very light on it. But, I mean, we've seen Izzy chop the rear leg. I mean, that rear leg is still going to be there. You can chop that one as well, even if the lead leg isn't there for the attack. So, I saw the scenario. I saw the possibilities, but I didn't see the reality. And we saw the reality play out over the course of 25 minutes. And that's why it was just so tense. And I remember thinking going into even like that 5th round, because round 1 almost gets a knockout. I'm like, oh my gosh, we've got ourselves a title fight here. Like, this is unbelievable. Round 2, Izzy swings momentum back in his direction. I'm like, yep, he dealt with that well. Now he's going to make the adjustments. And then round 3, Sean kind of got back to what he was doing best. And you just wondered how things were going to play out. Would it continue to be this chess match? How would it work? Would Izzy just turn up the volume at some point? And that was one thing that kind of stood out to me. And it's funny, right? Because the comparisons are always between Israel Adesanya and Anderson Silva, right? And Anderson Silva had a couple performances over the years where it was like, what was he doing there? Like, why was he? And sometimes I think both these guys are such mixed martial artists that they want everything to be beautiful and they want everything to be right and they want to counter the right way and make the right move. And sometimes it's like, just go get in a dogfight. And even in that 5th round, I thought maybe Izzy would just be like, just go. Like, you're clearly down on the cards. This clearly has not been working. You got to just go get in a dogfight because you're probably the more talented fighter. You're probably the more well-rounded fighter. You can do this. And it just never happened. And I thought that was odd. And I thought at some point, Sean Strickland would turn to the wrestling. I'll tell you, one of the most comical moments or just, game or storylines throughout the night was Eric Nicksicks just begging him between rounds, like, can you please just grapple a little bit? And then you'd hear him scream, optics.
Optics.
It was just amazing. And he just never did.
So I was watching this fight. I'm glad you brought that up because it was on my notes and right. And I was thinking in real time, I said, how is anybody there? Listen, it would have been a travesty if those optics like played out to fruition and Strickland didn't get the nod, because I was in a position where I was saying, like, I'm just fundamentally not agreeing with his coaching strategy right now, because clearly Strickland was winning every exchange. If we're even calling it an exchange, there was no exchanges. There was a roll, pop. That's what the game was. And so I'm saying he doesn't need it. It's only going to expose him. He found the recipe. The recipe is suffocation. The suffocation is what he did, and he did it brilliantly. So I remember I was telling my buddy Grant, right? You know my buddy Grant, sure. Great judge. We watch all the fights together, and we were both being like, no, do not do that. Do not do that. I mean, I understand the coaching strategy. We're in the other guys. We're on his home turf, right? Yep. We're not overly liked. Let's leave no doubt. I understand it. And I think that's where it's coming from the optics. Would you agree?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I think that's exactly what they're looking for. Because, and this is one thing, we always talk about, fans, and sometimes we'll talk about a guy getting a hometown decision, right? And that just doesn't happen. I mean, I understand people want to lay out the conspiracy theories, but what I think does happen sometimes is judges are indirectly influenced by the crowd, right? Where, the hometown guy lands a combination and maybe it hits the gloves or maybe it doesn't land clear, but the crowd goes crazy like, oh, amazing. And then the opponent counters back and it's dead silence. And I think judges can, not meaning to, be influenced by that. I don't see how you can tune that all out and not feel it. So I absolutely believe that's what it was about, is, hey, let's make sure we get these takedowns and mix those in and try to make sure that the judges have no doubt in their mind who's winning these rounds.
Were you shocked by the power difference in this fight?
Yes. Well, at least what we saw. I mean, what we expect, because Sean Strickland, you don't think of as a big power puncher. He even says it himself. He doesn't have a lot of power. To see him rock Israel Adesanya like that in the opening round shocked me. And I thought the real power was be in Adesanya, but man, this is the guy that flatlined Alex Pereira. We saw the power that he has. A guy in Alex Pereira that is now a light heavyweight contender and might be fighting for the 205-pound belt soon. And he flatlined him. And we didn't see that. We saw Sean Strickland walk out of there without a mark on his face. Looked like he hadn't even been in a fist fight.
And when to land a devastating hook, you need the space.
Right.
You didn't get that. That's where Pereira made a mistake, right? They were throwing at range, and Sean Strickland just didn't give him the range time and time again. And I want to go back to that second round because Izzy really didn't do much in that second round. He didn't hit him much. I think he may have hit him twice, like two major significant strikes. Never hurt him. It just made him roll and reset by being Strickland, roll and reset. And after the barrage that Strickland unloaded on Izzy in round number 1, I almost feel that Strickland says, I'm going to stick to my game plan here. I'm not going to extend myself. I'm going to get back that little bit of wind that I threw out in round 1, and I'm going to make him work for everything. I believe that Israel Adesanya, for the first time that I've seen, was on his back foot and on his scooter going backwards the whole time. People have no idea how exhausting that is. Fighting going backwards is a lot harder than fighting going forwards. You're not in your rhythm. Your breathing isn't the same. Everything, when you're pushing the action, even though it might look like you're exerting more energy going forward all the time, it's not reality. Because you're in your zone, you're breathing good, you're relaxed. When you're on your back foot and always moving, you're tense. Your rhythmatic breathing isn't the same. And I just don't think that Izzy accounted for the drain that it would take on him by moving backwards as much.
Yeah, man, you laid it out perfectly in terms of fight tactics and what it feels like to do that. And even if you're not, a person that has the ability to go in and spar and to feel what that feels like, just get on a treadmill and start walking backwards. Even if you're not in a fist fight, your body's just not used to that way. That's not what you normally do. Is you're moving forward. That's how you. So when you're doing that, everything's in reverse, and your body just reacts a little bit differently to it. And can we just add in as well, Sean Strickland never sits down between rounds, ever, ever, ever. So this was not unique, right? Like there were some things that happened this week that I don't think people watch a lot of Sean Strickland fights. Like, right, when he never looked at Israel Adesanya in the eyes during face-offs, people said, ooh, what does that mean? Sean Strickland never looks at guys in the eyes during the face-offs, right? He also never sits down in between rounds. But this was even to a new level because it wasn't just he didn't sit down in between rounds. He was literally like walking back out to the center of the cage, like showing like, I'm ready to go. Eric Nicksicks in the corner were having to follow him around to the center of the cage to try to give him some advice. And I think that was all playing in the mentality as well, just showing like, bro, I don't even need this break right now. Like, what are we even doing? Let's get back out here and keep going. I'm ready to keep this pressure on you. And I thought that was a beautiful thing to watch as well.
I do love how they coach Strickland, though, because I have noticed this every single time. They don't give him a lot. They gave him 15 seconds. I'm going to say what I'm going to say to you. Take it if you want. Don't if you don't. I'm getting out of the cage, because that's how he is a unique bird, man. He is unique as hell. Okay. And they're not going to inundate him with anything because they know he may listen to it. He may not. Like, it's not whether it goes through or not. They're just giving him a little something to think of, and then we're out. We're here to make sure if you needed water, here you go. I'm going to give you one or two things. And I'm going to liken this to like when I fought, and even when I do jiu-jitsu, I tell my coach, tell me the time. Tell me if you see something completely obvious. Do not be yelling things at me. Just right. I don't respond that way, right? And that's how kind of I think they were like Nick's does and Extreme Couture. They come in, we know our guy. We know the way he's going to be. We're going to come in. We're going to give him a couple little things to think of. If he sees it, give him water, and we're going to get the hell out of his way.
And that's a sign of a great coach, man. It really is. And there's other coaches that do the same, but I think you're spot on in that you need to know your athlete, right? And you need to coach your athlete for what helps, motivate that athlete, for what helps direct that athlete, not assume that everybody needs the exact same treatment, because some people react different ways, right? Like some people, and I agree with what you're saying. I think sometimes, especially in the middle of a fight, in the middle of a jiu-jitsu match, whatever, if you're inundating with information because you're yelling so much and all that, it's too much, you know what I mean? And not only that, if you got a smart opponent, they're listening to it as well, and they're hearing what the direction is as well. And so if they're, unless you're using code or using some kind of reverse type tech, then you're essentially giving them the blueprint for what you're about to do. So I love it. And I mean, Eric Nicksicks, I'm happy to see the praise that he's getting, because I feel like in the community as a whole, people are really starting to see it. But those of us here in Las Vegas,
rebuilt Extreme Couture. He single-handedly rebuilt that team.
It's amazing, man. The leadership that he provides, the example that he sets in that gym, the vibe that's in there, man. It's unbelievable. He's a good dude on top of all that, but just a great leader, a great motivator. And it's so cool to see him really, I think, getting what he deserves, man, and the recognition. But it was smart. They did this thing the right way, and they know how Sean's going to respond, and Sean did it over the course of 5 rounds. And I'm telling you what, I've been thinking about this, and we had to talk about this, but you talk about the biggest upsets, like where this ranks in terms of the biggest upsets of all times. You praise Marc Goddard for letting this thing go all 5 rounds because it got rid of the controversy, and it did. That's great. We're not talking about any controversy whatsoever, and I love that. And the other thing that did is that this, to me, makes this almost an even bigger upset than had Sean Strickland leveled him in the first round. If Sean Strickland knocks him out in the first round, we go, man, the sport, people get caught, man. It just happens. Flukes happen. But you can't say that here. You can't just say like, oh, well, people get caught, man. Flukes happen. Like, no, we're saying, and it makes it almost an even bigger, more impressive upset to me because he did it over the course of 25 minutes. He stuck to the game plan and got it done, and that's amazing.
One thing that I was thinking about, and I hadn't heard it really talked about in this, but I mean, we both know it. We've seen enough fights to know you get cracked early, you're never the same.
Right.
How much do you think that played into this fight?
I think it had to at least a little bit, but I mean, the fact that Adesanya came back in 1 round, like leads you to believe it looked relatively clear. And I will say by the 5th round, he looked like he was out of gas and out of options, and I don't want to say packing it in, but I thought that 5th round, like I even tweeted before the start of the 5th round, like, this is about to be tense, because you knew Adesanya, everybody knew he was down on the scorecards. He has got to go for broke right now.
And his corner said, you need a finish. His corner said that to him, and he didn't come out with any urgency.
I didn't see anything different in round 5 that I saw in the rest of the fight. And that to me showed a man that was, and again, I'm not trying to level.
I saw Sean Strickland saying, "Come on, come on."
I know, right? Who had that? I want to know who envisioned the fight that way. Like, I bet by the end of 5 rounds, there will be no grappling whatsoever. It'll be a pure stand-up fight, and Sean Strickland will be yelling at him and taunting at him in the final seconds. That was just, what a way to cap off the fight. Unbelievable. But yeah, I mean, look, so I think, getting hurt like that early definitely had some impact, but I just think overall, as you said, it was just the relentless pressure, and I think it wore him down, and I think it broke him physically and mentally by the end of the fight.
I think there was a big mental game going on in this fight, and Sean Strickland won the mental fight, right? And I'm going to say that because in the video package buildup right before the fighters walk out, Israel Adesanya said something, and I turned to Grant and I said, that doesn't bode well for Izzy. And when Izzy said he's not built for this game, there was one thing he said. He said he's not built for this. And I just go, there was nothing this man has been built for other than this.
Well, see, and that's the key, right? Sean Strickland is not built to be a mixed martial arts superstar in the way that Israel Adesanya is. Sean Strickland is never going to have a dance on the way into a packed stadium. You know what I mean? He's not going to create these iconic images and these moments. He's not going to walk in like the Undertaker into a fight. Like that, Israel Adesanya is a superstar, and Sean Strickland can never do that. But you are 100% right. Sean Strickland was built for fighting. I mean, if you hear Sean Strickland over the years, if there was ever any criticism of Sean Strickland over the years, and if you talk to people that train with this man, they will tell you what a phenomenal teammate he is, right? Because he gives you hard rounds, but he gives you advice, he gives love, all those things. But if there was ever any criticism of Sean Strickland over the years, it was just that he was a mean SOB when it came time to spar, because he just goes in there and fights like every time. That's all he does is fight. After winning the belt, what did he say? This belt means nothing to me. All it means is that I now have more money to finance my hobby, which is fighting. Like, this just allows me to train and do what I love to do. So I think they were both built for two different things. And you're right. If Israel Adesanya mistaked the fact that Sean Strickland is not built to be a UFC superstar for the fact that he's not built to be a UFC champion, then that was a severe judgment error on his part.
Do you think Izzy underestimated him?
I do. I really do. And that was one concern I had coming in, right? You're coming off the Alex Pereira series, right? I mean, you're coming off, you're a boogeyman, this man that is, chased you throughout your life. And this is the biggest moment in your career. And you have to slay the dragon. And you do it. And again, you create this iconic moment by firing off the arrows. I mean, Sean Strickland's not going to fire off the arrows when he knocks you out, right? I mean, that's who he is. And then you've got to follow up this guy that you look at as the court jester, right? A guy that just talks and is silly and doesn't. I mean, we all know Sean Strickland doesn't have power. We all know that Sean Strickland is not nearly as dynamic as Israel Adesanya is. And so, yeah, I think he did. And I think sometimes there was a moment to me, and I don't know if you watched the whole broadcast or what you were doing, but I think it was off the top of the show where they talked about, and I believe it was Megan O'Leary that brought this up. Maybe it was John Anik, I can't remember. But he asked production to send him the walkout so that, he could envision all these things Israel did. And sometimes I worry that he's worried about the wrong things, right? That he's worried about, if it's because he's envisioning everything, it's just I have to have this in my mind. But sometimes I think it's because I need to know how this looks, and I want to create this moment, and I want to create this shot. And like I said, sometimes I think he wants everything to be too perfect, where it's like, dude, just go get in a dogfight. You're a damn good fighter, man. I think if you just turn up the heat, you could have given Sean Strickland a little bit more problems here. So I'm interested, man. I feel like they got to run it back at some point. I don't know if it has to be next. There's a lot of options on the table, but I want to see these two dudes do it again. We didn't hear from Israel Adesanya yet. I'm sure we'll hear from him on his YouTube channel. We heard from Eugene Behrman, his coach, afterwards, who talked a little bit about the difficulties they were having on the night, the struggles they had of making a connection. Which I found very, very intriguing. So,
yeah, me too.
I'm really curious to hear more when Israel Adesanya is ready to speak. And I'm anxious to see what would happen if these two do it again. But no matter what happens, if they do meet up again, you can never take away this moment from Sean Strickland, man. I mean,
and you're
this
gonna
is
have to
part of
solve
UFC history.
And you're going to have to solve the riddle of space and distance, because that was the battle to me, and it was apparent very early that Izzy didn't have an answer for it. Going in round three, I said, there's no answer for this. Izzy has to get creative, like way more creative to land these big strikes. And I just thought the defense, the herky jerky reaching. There was one point, I don't know if you do, I didn't even put this in my notes, but just jumped in. Sean Strickland grabbed his arm, yanked him, and punched him. Do you remember that?
That's crazy, man. That's amazing. Sean
Because
Strickland.
these feints that Izzy was throwing out, he just grabbed it at one point, grabbed the feint.
Unbelievable.
Because he wasn't overly flinching and extending himself on these. And I think and I was commentating this with my buddies, as I just said, he's not drawing the strikes out of Strickland. He's a little lost right now. He can't problem solve this in real time because the one thing that he needed to have happen isn't happening. And it's happened in every other fight. It happened even Pereira. Even when he feints, Pereira would throw a leg kick. Okay, now I know he's moving off of my feints.
Yep. Don't bite on the feint and you shut down a lot of. So that's what do you want to see next, right? There's a lot of options on the table. Dana White at the end was asked, does a rematch make sense? And he's like, yeah, a rematch does make sense. And I think there's a case to be made from it. But you've also got Dricus du Plessis, who this was supposed to be his fight. And he's, he's coming out here. He's saying, look, hey, he had a great tweet where he said, look, man, we had the two biggest upsets of 2023. I came out and shocked the world. You shocked the world. Let's meet up together. But you've also got a big fight coming up as well between Khamzat Chimaev and Paulo Costa. That's happening next month in Abu Dhabi. So there's a lot of options on the table. And I can honestly make a case for all of them and why they make sense. I think, I think dollars and cents wise, it's probably the rematch. And that's probably why Dana White said, let's do rematch. But I don't know. There's some fresh blood in there. Might be interesting too. So what do you want to see next?
Here's my take. I got my notes. Notes right here. Right.
All right.
Izzy and DDP has to happen.
Agreed.
I think that's the fight to make next. Here's why. Right. Israel Adesanya has 1 win and 2 losses in his last 3 fights. Mm-hmm. That's crazy to say.
Yes, it is.
And so I think he needs a definitive victory in a grudge match. This has to happen. Now, I think this could be a December. It has to be after the first of the year. Izzy, in my opinion, needs to go. He has been the one thing that Izzy, that I have so much respect for him, is this guy is the most active champion we have ever seen and ever had. He deserves a break. It has to be next year, and it has to be against DDP, in my opinion. There is too much that has been built up for that fight not to happen. In the meantime, let's look at the schedule. The schedule is in 1 month from now, you've got Paulo Costa and Khamzat fighting. I don't see a scenario where Izzy can't take a break. He needs to take a break, right? And then him and DDP need to happen. It has to happen. And then that leaves the winner of Khamzat and Paulo Costa with not a dance partner.
I like it. I like where you're going with that. Now, here's the thing. You're gonna have to cut. You're gonna have to throw some extra money towards Dricus du Plessis, I think, to make that happen, right? Because I can see Dricus, and he kind of laid it out. Now he said it in an insulting way. He was like, "I don't want to fight that version of Israel Adesanya. That guy looked like an amateur. I want him to get better." So he did it as an insult. But I think what he really means is, I don't want to have to take that fight and it not be a title fight. I want my next fight to be for a title, right? Because fighting for a title, not only is it about potentially winning a belt and what that means in terms of legacy and accomplishment, but it comes along with financial additions as well. And that's what it's about, man. But, you fight for a title. That's when the real money comes. Now, I think you bring up a great point. Now, here's another thing Eugene Berriman said. Eugene said, hey, we talked to Mick Maynard and we said, we'll take the rematch next week. Now, here's the problem. Sean Strickland would absolutely fight next week. Sean Strickland wants to fight all the time. But I think you're right. I mean, I think it's going to be interesting to see how Izzy and his team react to this, because I agree with you. I think Izzy needs some time off. But it sounds like they don't want any time off. They want to get right back in there and do this. And that has been a hallmark of his career, which is incredibly admirable, as he's one of the busiest UFC champions in promotional history. The guy goes out there and does it, and we applaud that. But I think in this particular instance, he needs some time away. Just take some time off, just decompress a little bit and address these issues. But I like what you're saying.
But for that to piggyback on that point, like when has Izzy not ever came out and gave in his opinion? When has Izzy ever not come out and been the charismatic show person, win or lose? He did it against, and he lost, and he just says, "Listen, it didn't go the way I planned. Here's my coach. You talk to him." So I say all that to say this. I don't want to cut you off, but I say all that to say this is there has to be, three just doesn't mix, right? And so there has to be somebody that's left out of the fray. And unfortunately, I think schedule and timing wise, it is a DDP, even though I want to see that Izzy. There's that Izzy fight. But if Izzy is coming off of two out of his three fights were losses. One, he gets stopped. Two, the other one, he gets definitively beaten. If it's anybody not named Israel Adesanya, does he get an immediate title shot again?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, you're right. As I think it through, here's what I think would be ideal. Now, again, we're having to assume all parties would be interested. We can make the money, right, et cetera, et cetera. But
I feel bad for DDP in this whole situation because he's earned it.
I agree. And that's why I say he would have to be the one to buy into this. He is really kind of, what this teeters on. But I think in an ideal world, if it was just all things equal, I would say you're absolutely right. Let Khamzat and Paulo Costa play out. Take the winner of that fight and put it up against Sean Strickland for the belt. And then as a co-main event, put Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis as the co-main event of that fight card. And then if something does happen, and maybe that's part of the resolution with Dricus, is like, hey, FYI, you got this fight with Izzy, but if something goes wrong, if we need somebody in that title fight, you're that guy. Hey, look, Khamzat Chimaev and Paulo Costa, they've had some issues making weight over the years, right? So, I mean, maybe there's like, sometimes you say, hey, you'll kind of be the backup, and you go, well, those dudes have never missed weight, so why does that even matter? We know nothing's going to happen. In this situation, it could happen. So if you say to Dricus, you're fighting Izzy as the co-main event, and oh, by the way, if anything happens, you're now fighting for the title, maybe that would be enough to get him to say, all right, I'll do that.
It's just going to be interesting how we play out because I think everybody's like, listen, yeah, I would say if anybody other than Izzy, does he get that shot? We said no, but guess what? It is Izzy.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are we saying here? Like, of course he deserves it. He's reigned supreme for the last 5-6 years. You know what I mean? And then furthermore,
it's like if Conor McGregor wants to fight for a title and you go, well, if it was anybody but Conor, you wouldn't give him that. You're right. We wouldn't. But guess what? It is Conor, so we're giving it to him.
So does Izzy deserve it? Yes. Does DDP deserve it? Yes. Does the winner of Costa Khamzat deserve it? Yeah, maybe. I don't know. But that would be a marketable fight, whoever those two fight. So,
okay. Well, and that's why I was going to ask you, because you always come at this from a meritocratic standpoint, which I think is, I always come to you from a business side of it, right? Out of all those names, now, so we can do Sean Strickland versus Paulo Costa, Khamzat Chimaev, Dricus du Plessis, or Israel Adesanya. You've got Sean against one of those four guys. Which one do you think makes the most money for the UFC?
Honestly, Strickland Khamzat.
That might be the one caveat. Khamzat has so much buzz around him that if he mows through Paulo Costa somehow, that might be the only one I think that you're right could beat it. And it wouldn't be because there's any rivalry between them or there's any history or there's any story. It would just be because Chimaev has had this insane run behind him. So I agree with you. It's crazy because I feel like Dricus deserves it. I feel like Strickland deserves it. If Paulo Costa beats Khamzat, I mean, he would deserve to have his name in there as well.
But Khamzat hasn't fought at 85.
It's so crazy, but he has so much buzz, right? And what does Dana say? My job is to put on the fights that fans want to see. I think people want to see Khamzat fight for a title. Now, I'm not assuming anything. He's got a tough fight in front of him. As you said, he hasn't even been fighting at 85. But if he wins, and if he wins that impressively, the buzz around him is going to be insane calling for that fight.
That is the people's main event on that Abu Dhabi card, Paulo Costa Khamzat. Golly, I cannot wait for it. Hey, listen, we've taken 40 minutes and we're still on the main event. And
I can keep talking about it.
I can too, man. And we haven't
turned the world
into it. Yeah, but we got to move on. But hey, Sean Strickland, you shocked the world. Congratulations. You said it. I never in a million years would have ever pictured that I would be here. And guess what, man? You've made a lot of mistakes in your life, but you've overcome so much adversity that I just personally, when I see that, I am just happy for people. Like, I'm just happy for him. And, to a degree, maybe he changes his ways a little bit. Maybe he doesn't, but who knows? In that moment, I said a guy who overcome everything. That's why we were always so happy for Francis Ngannou. If you're happy for Francis Ngannou, you have to be happy for Sean Strickland. Same boat.
So true, man. That's such a great way to put it, man. When you talk about a guy that comes from nothing, as he said, abusive, alcoholic father, racist grandfather, didn't, dropped out of school, didn't even get a GED, to reach the height of anything, whether it be mixed martial arts or any other industry, to reach the height of an industry. How can you not applaud that, man? Taking yourself from nothing and being the best at something, man. Pretty incredible.
Absolutely. Now let's go on to another fight that I wanted to jump into. We got to speed through this one. Alexander Volkov puts on a great performance. He batters Tai Tuivasa, but he batters him and then yet gets the third ever Ezekiel choke in UFC history. How did anybody see that happening?
Absolutely not. I thought this was going to be a tough matchup for Tai Tuivasa because these two guys can hit hard on the feet, and Volkov is just so much bigger.
Yeah, but it's too much to overcome.
Too much to overcome. But I did not see an Ezekiel choke coming. But that's always cool. When you see something that rare, it's awesome, right? Because if he had just knocked him out, we'd have been like, oh, okay, whatever, you got to win. I kind of thought that might happen. But it gets an Ezekiel choke, man. So he shows a little wrinkle to his game. Great win for Volkov. And I'll just say it. Look, 3 losses in a row for Tai Tuivasa. I don't care. Put that guy against anybody. He's so entertaining. He goes nowhere to me. He's still one of the most fun guys to watch fight. He's got a great attitude outside the cage. He's got an entertaining style in it. Put Tai Tuivasa against anybody. You can put him in a headliner next on a fight night. I don't care. That guy's a fan favorite. His stock does not drop to me.
Volkov is so damn big with one of the scariest back tats I've ever seen in my life, by the way.
Yes, it is.
But did you notice, so when, like an Ezekiel choke, I'm going to try and show people, right? It's behind the head, and then he comes through on the first. It's almost like a reverse rear naked choke to a degree. Right? Very rarely does that arm get all the way across the throat. It almost turns into like a punch choke.
Right.
Did you see how long his damn arms are? They were like so far across. I was like, oh my gosh, you're not getting out of that.
It's so funny because I never in a million years did I consider a possibility of Volkov winning by Ezekiel choke. But as soon as he started going for it, I thought this should definitely be in his arsenal all the time because he has those limbs. Even against a dude with a neck as thick as Tai Tuivasa, you know what I mean? Your arms and limbs are so – it's like a dude with incredibly long legs. It's oh, yeah, of course he uses a triangle choke. You know what I mean? Because this should be part of his arsenal. If he's on top, he should be looking for this.
Yeah, so, I mean, no surprises other than the finished third ever Ezekiel choke in UFC history. We had some other fun fights on that main card, but we brought this guy up a few months ago. One of our favorite fighters here came through the CFFC. We've both seen him. I've reffed him a few times, and that is Jose Chepe Machine Gun Mariscal with a TKO victory over Jack Jenkins, who Jack Jenkins has the nastiest leg kicks in the game. But that judo Ezekiel trip, posted out, boom, explosion of the elbow. But that was an extremely fun fight up until that point.
Yeah, you kind of knew going in this was going to be a fun fight, and it was. Jack Jenkins, first of all, that dude is still a top-level prospect, man. This was unfortunate. It just goes to show you. It actually kind of – I haven't shown it yet to my kid. We're going to go to jiu-jitsu tonight, and I'm going to show him before we go to class. You know why coach makes you do break falls at the start of every class? And you probably go, why are we doing this? This is dumb. Why do we do this every class? This is exactly why, because you can't post like that. Fun fight. Chepe Mariscal is as fun as it gets. If he's not on your radar, he should be. He's fun to watch fight. And I will just say, talk about stock not dropping. Jack Jenkins, man, hope that everything says he's got to get an MRI, check out for some potential ligament damage. Hopefully there's nothing that's going to keep him on the shelf for a long time, because that dude is still a great prospect with plenty of great moments ahead of him. Yeah,
the one thing that I said is everybody was they going in the fight talking about Jenkins' leg kicks and how he's broken people's legs and whatnot, and then just why we as fans, and if we know, because we've seen him on the regional scene, and he fought every tough just bastard out there on the regional scene, but why we are fans, and now why everybody needs to be a fan of, even when his leg was killing him, he took battered shots. He said, you know what, I am fighting you. And then that, and you listen, he was getting him down with that, regardless of the break or not. He was getting him down. And then Mariscal is such a savage on the ground as well. And he's unrelenting, and he just does everything. Listen, if you guys don't know, become a fan of this guy, because win or lose, he is going to give you one hell of an exciting fight. And he wins a lot more than he loses because of the battle-testedness that he came up under on that regional scene.
That's the word, battle tested. That's the word that just kept circling through my head, and we talked about him before, but that's the value. Everybody wants to get to the UFC as quickly as possible. Understandably so, right? It's the pinnacle of the sport. It's where the biggest paychecks are at. It's where the biggest glory is at, and that's why people want to get there. But remember, the key is not to get there. The key is to stay there, and a lot of what it takes to stay there is getting that experience on the regional level and developmental level. And Chepe Mariscal, as you said, if you haven't gone through his record before, pull it up and go through it and just start looking at the names you recognize on there, man. It's pretty wild.
Bryce Mitchell, Soriano, those are two I refed. Like, are you kidding me?
Yep. The battle tested. That's the word.
All right, let's look ahead. Alexa Grasso, UFC champion, fighting Valentina Shevchenko this coming Saturday, UFC Fight Night 227. From a T-Mobile Arena, you should be flying back to Vegas that day. Are you going to be in attendance?
I am. Yeah, I'm taking an early flight. I don't even know. I don't think really we're going to be able to sleep after CFFC 125. I think we got to head out to the airport, fly back, and I will make it in time to be there for Noche UFC.
Awesome, man. I'm looking forward to that fight. We're going to see if it was a fluke or not.
I'm torn, man. I'm so torn on this fight because I've been saying since the first fight happened. I mean, you kind of knew right away they're going to fight again. And it was such a great performance from Alexa Grasso. But from the beginning, I said, man, who am I picking in the rematch? And it's like, I think I'm still picking Valentina Shevchenko. I think.
How can you not?
Exactly. I mean, one of the all-time greats, but, there's all this kind of data leaning against her, right? Like, very few champions, when they get the immediate rematch, gain their belt back. Shevchenko, she has been at the tail end of her career. I mean, she's you talk about battle-tested, man. She's been fighting for years and years, even more, in Muay Thai before her mixed martial arts career. And we talk about it as well. We talked about it a little bit with Israel Adesanya. Anytime you're a long reigning dominant champion, people are just breaking your game down all day, every day.
Yeah, the game catches up to you.
That's it. Because everybody is imagining not just winning the title, but winning it from you. And they know how you fight, and they know what your tendencies are because they've watched you over and over and dreamed of beating you, dreamed of being you. So who knows, man? I feel like I'm picking Valentina Shevchenko again, but I also can't say, and by the way, go ahead and put your mortgage payment on that because that is guaranteed. There's no way it happens twice. It could happen twice.
Well, let's back up a year and some change ago, right? A lot of people think Santos beat Shevchenko.
Yep.
Right? And then Grasso beat Shevchenko. And, Valentina, I mean, this girl is a savage, but she has one hell of a resume under her belt. I don't know her age, but 27 fights into her career, fighting at a championship level. She fought, former champion, just retired.
Amanda Nunes.
Twice.
Yep. Twice.
She's got a lot of wear and tear on her. Like, who knows? Is it catching up to her? I don't know. But all I'm saying, past history, a lot of people said Santos won. Grasso, stopped her, submitted her. I don't know. Are we seeing a complete changing of the guard? Because I don't really want to say a changing of the guard is that you lose once and then immediate, like, hey, it was a little shakeup at the top for a second.
Yeah.
But are we seeing a changing of the guard? You see that?
100%. That's what we're going to see. I mean, if it happens. I mean, look, she is 35 years old. She is one of the all-time greats. There's no question about it. She's pound for pound one of the best, has been for a while. When her and Amanda Nunes were both in their prime, I used to say, hey, for me, pound for pound women's best, it's 1A and 1B. Like, I almost hate to even say. And a lot of people will say Amanda Nunes was number one, Shevchenko was number two, and they would say, well, look, Nunes beat her, so that's clear 1 and 2. But it's like, come on, man, Nunes is so much bigger than her. Like, she shouldn't have even had to fight her to begin with. You know what I mean? But she did. She challenged herself, and they were talking about doing it a third time as well. So I'm interested by this because you are right. Tyler Santos fight, I scored that for Shevchenko, but I had no problem for anybody that said they didn't. And even if you scored it for her, you realize that she was pushed to the very limit, man. It was a close fight. And then, as you said, finished by Alexa Grasso. So we're going to see, because if Alexa Grasso beats her again, that doesn't take away from what Shevchenko accomplished before.
Hell no.
But it would signal, as you said, a potential like changing of the guard. Or is it a situation where Shevchenko had been at the top for so long that maybe she had just started to take things a little bit for granted? Now, she's a martial artist. She trains all day, every day. She takes care of her body. It's not like she's out there partying in between fights and she got out of shape or anything like that. But maybe you you kind of ease up off some of the extra rounds. You lighten up practices a little bit because, hey, we've been beating everybody. We're dominant this game. Does that light some kind of fire in her where she's like, oh, hell no. Like, yeah, I got pushed to the limit a little bit against Santos, but I still won. Then I got beat. And that changed everything.
She's always disciplined. But when you add motivation on top of discipline, who knows?
Insert Michael Jordan meme right here, and I took that personal. You know what I mean? Like, just getting that motivation where she's like, I was already at the top. Now I'm pissed off and I'm going to be even better. So I'm intrigued by this fight. I really, really am. Because Alexa Grasso is a great fighter, man, but I didn't pick her the first time around. I'll be honest with you. I love her boxing is so fun. She's so great, man. She's a great representative of the sport. She's a great representative of Mexico. I mean, she's everything you want in a fighter. But I was just like, yeah, but she's just not quite as good as Valentina. And she proved me wrong. Can she prove me wrong again? I'm excited for it, man. I think this is a phenomenal main event.
Yeah, I'm excited for it as well. I almost was gonna go out there and shadow there, but I'm gonna be doing it the next week on the 23rd card, fight night in the Apex. But the reason I'm not is because the night prior from North Dakota. Me and you are going to be at CFFC 125 from the Four Bears Casino. What can we expect? Listen, we say this a lot, okay? If you're not watching these regional promotions, say specifically a CFFC, then you're not seeing the stars of tomorrow. And this, in my opinion, LFA, them, there are one or two more out there that are very, very good. But we do both work for CFFC a lot. So I'm a little partial there just because I see the talent. People need to be watching. What should they watch for this Friday night from North Dakota on UFC Fight Pass?
Yeah, I mean, if you happen to be in North Dakota, come out and join us at the Four Bears, right? It's our first time out there. I'd love to see you. Love to meet you. May have a co-host there that we haven't seen in a little while who suddenly has a little bit of extra time on his hands. Just saying. I don't know. Might be there. But yeah, we got a great main event. Roybert Echeverria versus Pololo knocking away. Great main event there. 7-1 versus 6-1. Roybert Echeverria was his only loss on Dana White Contender Series. He's looking to rebound from that. Pololo, I mean, one of these Hawaiians that's just out there wrecking shop and looking to make it
hit hard.
Man, I'm looking forward to that one. Nick Meck is undefeated in our co-main event. He's going against JP St. Louis, who's had a lot more experience. He's had some setbacks, but it's been against a top-level talent. We got two women's fights on the main card, which is exciting. Miranda Granger, former CFFC champ and UFC veteran. She's kind of on the business development side of things with the organization now, and that's one of the things that she's been tasked with is kind of helping grow our women's divisions as well at CFFC, and so she's doing that. So a lot of fun fights, and I'm with you, man. I love these regional cards, man, because you really do get to see these athletes and you start to understand who they are and know who to look out for, and you get to watch their journey, man. We talked about, Sean Strickland coming from nothing, coming from terrible situations and making himself a UFC champion way down the road. And man, when you can see these athletes do that, I mean, Aljamain Sterling, of course, came through the CFFC ranks, was a CFFC champ, and made his way all the way to UFC champion. So I love it.
Making huge waves in the UFC right now.
Oh,
I mean,
man.
We got Danny Barlow, Raheem Forrest, both going on the Contender Series. How many Contender Series guys have come off of CFFC in this last 2 years?
Ton, man. Absolute ton. So, yeah, it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. I think this is going to be another good card.
Another name I want everybody to pay attention to on the CFFC card, Kevin Sweepy Peace.
Yep.
This is a kid. He is a problem. He is a problem training out of Kill Cliff MMA in Florida. If this guy gets on top of you, he don't get off. And he's got hands. He brings in Daniel Cormier's boxing coach. I know Kevin Peace personally. He's a really good kid. When he first started out, man, I used to train with him when he first started in the game, right?
That's
and
awesome.
Now he's so light years ahead of me. Like if I'm scared to grapple with the kid now. But that's another
Great
name.
stuff.
And so when you watch these shows, you'll hear names like him, like a Mariscal, like a just whoever you want. Bryce Mitchell was in the promotion before he got there. Just so many people watch these cards. You will not be disappointed. And the great thing about CFFC, when I always go home and rewatch them, or if I'm not working and I'm watching them on Fight Pass, the production value is is unparalleled to anybody on the regional scene.
Top notch. Absolutely, man. Shout out to all the guys behind the scenes that make that happen, because they are super committed to making the product look good, and they do. And yeah, to your point, Charlie Campbell actually is making his debut this week in the UFC. Stepped up on short notice, needed a replacement. He came through the CFFC system, man. We saw him on Contender Series, thought he was going to get his contract. He was winning the fight. Then he got clipped and caught, and it was heartbreaking, but he came back, won another fight, and now he's stepping up on short notice.
Blackshear. Am I saying that correct?
Come on, Blackshear came through. Absolutely.
I refed his fight in CFFC where he won his title right before he went to the UFC.
Amazing. And it has some amazing performances since. It's so cool to see where the journey begins. So yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the shout. And we're excited to see you put in work out there.
All right, let's go. I'll see you in North Dakota. Aside from that, I already chronicalized your weekend. Friday.
Well, I got Dana White's Contender Series Tuesday, flying Wednesday, got North Dakota Friday, and then I'll be back for Noche UFC on Saturday. So, just a typical week. You know how it is.
Typical week. Yep, same here. Man, we have fun. Today, if you do get a chance to watch this today, it is Monday, September 11th. I would be reminisced to say that, looking back, man, what a crazy time in our life. I think it shaped a lot of people's patriotism that day. And I just got to thank everybody, all the first responders that were there that day, all our military personnel, and all our veterans who did everything they could that day and moving forward to keep us safe. Thank you. And if you guys see anybody like that, please go out of your way and thank them, because we both lived through that day, and a lot of our younger fans did not. And I can't tell you what a horrific day that was in our country's history.
I had a chance my family was in New York with me this past year, and I had a chance to take my son, to the landmark there and the memorial. And he hasn't really learned about it. He knows a little bit about it, but he's still young, hasn't learned about it all in school yet. But I wanted him to remember that spot and explain to him, how tragic it was. And I'll be honest with you, I got emotional, and that was just this past year. It was the first time I had been there and seen it in person. Obviously, I'd seen it on TV, and I got emotional, man. That was one of those rare days where everybody knows exactly where they were and how difficult that time was for all of us. So, yeah, man. I mean, September 11th will not pass without us remembering those that gave everything that day.
Yeah, so thank you to everybody keeping us safe, who continue to keep us safe. He is John Morgan. I am Eric McMahon. Enjoy the fights.